104.5, the team, your home for New York Yankees baseball. And thanks to Tech East Fire and Water Restoration, your best way back to normal. You can visit them online, tefirewater.com. Our friend Buster only gets to join us. So, Buster, there's been this odd debate going through the station lately, and callers have said it. I don't really see it, so let's see what you think. Does 5.5 innings worth of baseball in 1 week hurt the Yankees?
It could definitely be an issue for a team that is used to routine. I can tell you, baseball players are creatures of habit, and they like to have regular work. And, getting 1 day off is one thing. To get a couple days off, to get 3 days off, yeah, it can bother them, but that stuff can click right back in as well. You could go out and take a 4-0 lead in the first inning, and then you just pick up where you left off, and besides. I mean, they have so many great players, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Well, and Boone is going to be moving the rotation around too. So he's using this as an opportunity to tweak the starting rotation, which I for a guy that some fans are like, why is he the manager? I think this is a great indication of him understanding his team.
Yeah, and I suspect that he probably did this after having some meetings with folks in the front office talking about different possibilities. Look, the Red Sox are doing the same thing with Chris Sale. They're looking for opportunities to save bullets early in the year so that they'll be fresher later in the year. And the Yankees have two big candidates in regards to that in CC Sabathia and Masahiro Tanaka. Tanaka having demonstrated without a doubt in the past that he's better when he has extra rest, and Sabathia's at the age where he probably wouldn't mind a week or 2 or 3 off during the course of the year, so he's okay at the end of the season.
Buster, now we pivot to the young guys. As the more I see the way Clint Frazier is kind of blocked in the outfield and everything else, I'm almost convinced they're going to have to trade Red Thunder at some point soon.
They don't have to trade him. I do think that whenever the Yankees decide what they want in the summertime, in the trade market, and whenever the trade market becomes clear, then I think Frazier probably is one of the two most obvious guys to be considered for a trade. And, if they had traded for Garrett Cole, I think Clinton Frazier would have been in that trade. He's right at the forefront because they have extra guys in the outfield, because you've got Stanton, you've got Judge, you've got Aaron Hicks, you're loaded up. He definitely does have value, and I think if you're the Yankees, you also have to be cognizant of the idea that if you carry him over in the minor leagues into 2019, you're probably going to start hurting his trade value. We're seeing that with the Boston Red Sox now with Blake Swihart, where he doesn't have a place to play in the big leagues. He's sitting on the bench, and the Red Sox don't want to give him away, and on the other hand, folks with other teams are saying, well, he hasn't played that much in the big leagues, and that's, if you are the Yankees, you don't want that to happen. I think it's reasonable speculation to think that Frazier could be on the move this summer, but it might be the Brandon Drury, who they acquired this spring from the Diamondbacks. He could be a guy, now that Miguel Andujar is established himself at third base, where the Yankees would at least listen for sure.
Buster Olney with us right now, 104.5 the team. Buster, I'm going to give you some options.
Oh boy,
the following will be a Yankee: Manny Machado, Bryce Harper, both or neither.
In 2019, neither. I don't think either one will. I don't think the Yankees will add another big corner bat after getting Stanton. Part of the attraction of Stanton was that they could get him for much less than what Harper's price tag was. They have interest in Machado to some degree, and they, during the course of winter meetings, when it came out that the Orioles were willing to listen to offers, the Yankees are one of the teams that called. But I don't necessarily think, again, that they want to be the team that's going to put out huge dollars in him as a free agent. The one scenario that I'm going to be watching very closely this summer is with Machado in the trade market and whether or not the Yankees might turn out to be a club that could jump in. And I think that other stuff would have to play out first, because the Orioles are going to ask a very high price tag on Machado. They're probably going to scare away other teams. And I got to tell you, when you look at the potential third base market, the Cardinals might be interested. The Cubs might be interested in acquiring Machado to play shortstop. Some teams might want Machado, but they probably don't have what it takes to get him. And I feel like that the longer it plays out, the more likely that you could see the Yankees say, you know what, we're going for it. We'll be the team that makes the deal for Machado. I can't tell you as we sit here in mid-May, how that hole would be created. Maybe it's a situation where Andujar got hurt or Didi Gregorius got hurt. But I think the Yankees will be hanging around the periphery and waiting to see if the price will drop.
Oh, that breaks my heart as an Oriole fan because Levac could get our best player. And I'm sitting there watching SportsCenter this morning. I see Buster on there. They bring up this beautiful graphic of all these third basemen that are available. I'm thinking, no, not to the Yankees.
Terrible situation for the Orioles. I got to tell you, guys, because if you're the Orioles, you want Manny Machado to be the subject of the desire of about 10 different teams. You want no other third baseman available. And it feels like it's the exact opposite. I mean, everyone likes Manny as a player. 342 average this year, 13 home runs, putting up extra base hits. But it doesn't look like at this point that some team is starving for him and for his services. And on top of that, as I said on TV this morning, it looks like an incredible buyer's market because it looks like Josh Donaldson will be out there, Mike Moustakas of the Royals, maybe Drury, 4 or 5 other guys. It's not a great situation for the Orioles to take them into the marketplace.
Well, we'll move on to Robinson Cano, a former New York Yankee, and maybe some Yankee fans will look back and say this 80-game suspension justifies the Yankees not re-signing Cano. Is that the case after the suspension?
Boy, I have to believe, because this is the way I felt when I heard about the suspension, that, you know what, because I felt like through the biogenesis stuff that all of so many of Robinson's friends got nailed for PEDs in the biogenesis thing, and it felt like that Robbie was like the one trucker in the convoy that didn't get pulled over for speeding, okay? And so, you got to believe that if I'm thinking that it's at least in the backs of the minds of the folks with the Yankees, that they may have at some point wondered, you know what, do we want to give this player a 10-year deal at this age, given what we know happened in the past and given the fact that, Melky and Alex and others got busted. And I can't tell you if that was actually the case, but it would be reasonable speculation. And when it came down the other day, I wasn't surprised. I really wasn't. I guess the one question people ask about Robbie is, well, why would he take PDs in year 5 of a 10-year deal? I do think that there's a professional pride that some players in the past who've taken it, gone away from it, get back on it because they feel like they need it to be successful. And, Robbie's denied it, so I don't know for sure how it played out. I do know that most of the people who say that they didn't use PDs after they were tested positive turn out to be liars.
Buster Olney with us right now, thanks to our friends at Tech East Fire and Water Restoration. Buster, the Mets seem to be on fire right now. I'm hearing like other New York shows talking about who do you trade, DeGrom or Syndergaard or whatever. Is it that bad for the Mets that they need to start looking at building for the future?
Yeah, well, first off, I do think that if they get to that point where they're ready to wave the white flag, they should take those guys into the market and listen to offers. Do I think it actually would happen? No, because I think Mets fans would revolt. Because let's face it, as we sit here in 2018 and you wonder if this turns out to be a lost year, what's the quickest way for the Mets to get back into contention? Well, to build around DeGrom and to build around Syndergaard. But I do think it's a worthwhile conversation to have, just as I think I said to you a few weeks ago, that I think the Giants should at least have the conversations about Madison Bumgarner. It doesn't hurt to go out and talk to teams and figure out what you can get, and maybe somebody is so desperate that they'll absolutely blow you away. But just having seen the Mets' leadership work in recent years, I don't think that they would do something that they know that would really make their fans mad.
Well, moving from the NL East to the NL West, the Los Angeles Dodgers are struggling. Why is this Dodger? Yeah, why are they so bad all of a sudden?
It's a multifaceted answer for you. First off, obviously the injuries to some of their best players. Justin Turner's their best hitter, and he went down, and he just came back this week after being out for the first 6 weeks of the season. Clayton Kershaw, who's been their best pitcher, one of the best pitchers in baseball, he's for the third straight year dealing with injury stuff. Rich Hill, who was a big signing a couple years ago, he's had some finger issues. He's got an ERA over 7. I do think the bullpen has probably been the biggest culprit. They ranked 23rd out of 30 teams in bullpen ERA at 4.65. That's a huge problem for them. I would say this, and I said that if you're watching SportsCenter, I said this about the Dodgers. They're a mess, there's no question, but when you look at that division, it doesn't look like there's any team that's ready to run off and hide at the top of the division. The Diamondbacks have started well, but A.J. Pollock, their center fielder and their best player early on, just broke his thumb. Paul Goldschmidt has been overwhelmed by high velocity this spring. Teams are going after him with fastballs, and they've had some pitching injuries. The Giants aren't playing necessarily that great. The Rockies always will struggle for consistent pitching, so I do think that there's an opportunity for the Dodgers to get back into this.
Buster, it's like I always say, you can't buy a championship, you
You never say that. What are you talking about?
Yeah. You're waiting for it. I can tell from your voice you're waiting for the shouts from the gallery in response to that since you're a Yankee fan.
It is fun to be one of the lower payroll teams at this point with all this going on. Speaking of the NL West, this Brandon Belt thing, how much trouble is he about to be in with the league?
I think he'll probably get either fined or reprimanded or get a nasty letter, double secret probation, if you want to go the Animal House route. Look, it's not something that's often said. I will say this. I do think in recent years you're seeing the tension between players and umpires rise because of the technology. Because, when I first started covering baseball back in the 90s, what would happen on a missed or potentially a missed strike call, the hitter would go, that was a strike, or that was a ball, and the umpire would disagree with him, and then they would move on. Now, what you see are pitchers and hitters running back to the video room, looking at the replay, seeing where it stands on K-zone, and they hold on to their anger. That's what we saw with Brandon Belt. That was 20 minutes after that game yesterday that he kind of went on this rant about Doug Eddings, the umpire. So, I think it's probably something that's going to continue until they have an automated strike zone.
Buster, and you are always nice enough to call it as I think you can see what I see with Justin Verlander. He's a hog for attention. He doesn't want to use his bullpen.
He's pretty dang good.
And, my God, he's so good.
What happened on Wednesday night was so refreshing because we've gotten so accustomed to this idea that, starting pitcher comes out after 5 innings, then this parade of relievers who we're probably not going to remember in 10 years comes in after that. And last night, what happened with the Astros and Verlander was he got through the 7th inning, and they sent him back out for the 8th. And the Angels got a couple of guys on base, and he pitched through it. And then he went back out for the 9th inning with his pitch count over 100. Oh, my God. And a couple of guys got on base, and they left him in the game, and he got the last out. And it really, for me, was a reminder that baseball needs the Paul Bunyans, the Bumgarners, the Verlanders, the Kershaws, guys like that who are going to try to pitch through the 9th inning. I think that's a better product, and it certainly was the case. And before, I know you're getting close to wrapping up, but I was going to mention another guy who was like that was David Wells. And as we're talking here today, 20th anniversary of his perfect game. I covered that game. It was one of the coolest days that I've had since I started in baseball. And there's 3 things that I'll never forget about that day. One, of course, was that Don Larson, who threw the first perfect game in Yankee history, went to the same high school as David, Point Loma. Imagine the odds of that.
That's
Point
cool.
Loma High School in San Diego. 2, Paul O'Neill catches the last out of that perfect game. He was in the clubhouse before he realized that it was a perfect game. He thought it was just a no-hitter. And, oh, by the way, it was his second perfect game for Paul O'Neill. He'd been involved in the Tom Browning perfect game when he was with the Cincinnati Reds. And the third thing that always cracks me up when I think about that date, David, who I love to cover. I covered him with the Orioles. I love to cover him with the Yankees. But he came out with a book, and it was a big deal that, he had a hangover that day, and, he had been on a drinking thing the night before. That was what was in the book. And when I read that, I chuckled because, A, when you actually were there that day, what you heard from Mel Stoudemire, the Yankees pitching coach, was his stuff was electric in the bullpen. So it wasn't like he had to be dragged out to the bullpen to warm up for the start of that game. And you know what? Having gotten to know David through the years, it probably would have been odd if he had gone out to the mound without a hangover. And I say that with great fondness and respect.
That's one of my biggest, as a fan, I know they got Clemens back for him, but when they traded him, I'm like, are you serious right now? What are you doing?
Yeah, they were scared, and I can tell you exactly what happened the following spring in '99. David had made some noises about his contract, and he talked about he was going to show up out of shape. And Joe Torre was not a fan of David, and vice versa. And so I think when they got the opportunity to get the Rocket, who at that time was considered to be the best pitcher in baseball, they jumped at it.
Buster, is Paul O'Neill as close as we're going to get to Phil Rizzuto as somebody announcing the game?
Very similar personality, no doubt about it.
As soon as they show food, I'm like, count to 5, and Phil, Paul's going to be looking for it. Hey, where do those cookies come from?
And then there's certainly some games where you can tell Paul's like, oh, man, I'm going to head over the bridge.
Buster, where you at this weekend?
I am in Houston. We have the Indians and the Houston Astros. We're going to have Carlos Carrasco pitching against Lance McCullers. And I know you don't like Lance McCullers because of those last 24 curveballs he threw against your boys in Game 7.
I don't remember that. What do you? I don't. When did that happen? Buster, as always, man, thank you so much. We appreciate you.